Back in 2011, Dell released a gaming PC that cost an unbelievable $3,000. This is the Alienware Aurora R4, one of the most powerful and expensive gaming PCs money could buy at the time. Adjusted for inflation, that price would be over $4,400 today. That's enough money to build a modern gaming PC with an RTX 5090 and a Ryzen 7 980X 3D. Which got me thinking, can a gaming PC that once cost as much as a used car still handle modern games today? And more importantly, just how far can I upgrade it? Let's find out. To answer that question, I first had to buy one, but something strange happened when I started looking for it. Honestly, I couldn't find this machine anywhere near me. I checked Facebook Marketplace, I checked Amazon, nothing. It was as if this thing had completely disappeared. Thankfully, I eventually found it on eBay, and that's when things got even stranger. There were only 3 listings available, just 3. At that point, I started wondering if this machine was simply too old, or if nobody cared about it anymore. But the prices told a different story. Even after losing roughly 90% of its original value, these machines were still selling for around $300 to $400. That's still a lot of money for such an old system. But my curiosity got the better of me. If I was going to do this, I wanted the most original example I could find. After comparing all the listings, I ended up buying the cheapest one I could find for $300 with free shipping. Then came the waiting. About 5 days later, it finally arrived. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to open it and see what I'd actually bought. Oh my god, the box is enormous. It's literally bigger than I expected. And the first thing I noticed when I tried to move it was the weight. This thing is heavy, really heavy. I'd guess somewhere around 50 pounds. Oh my god, the moment I opened the box, I was blown away all over again. This thing is enormous. It's nearly 60 centimeters long. Before we dive into the hardware, I need to talk about the design for a second. If you're thinking about buying one of these today, make sure you have a very large desk. Seriously, this thing doesn't just sit on a desk, it practically becomes part of the furniture. The design philosophy couldn't be more different from Apple. Instead of sleek lines and minimalism, this feels like a strange mix of futuristic sci-fi styling and pure, unapologetic excess. It's big, it's bulky, it's completely over the top, and honestly that's exactly why I like it. Just look at this side panel release mechanism. For something that came out over a decade ago, it feels surprisingly modern. I genuinely love details like this. And this side panel alone feels like it weighs more than some entire budget PCs I've tested on this channel. Of course, it's not all perfect. It's pretty obvious Alienware was still trying to keep manufacturing costs under control. Most of the exterior is plastic rather than metal. Over the years, some owners have complained that the plastic clips on the front vents can become brittle and break. Still, standing here looking at it in person, I can understand why people were impressed when this thing first launched. Alright, let's take a look inside. And seriously, how do you even open this thing? I ended up watching a tutorial while trying to take it apart at the same time. Not exactly my proudest moment, but eventually, oh my god, I finally got it open. Now let's see what we're working with. Right away, I can see 4 sticks of DDR3 memory running at 1600 MHz. That's 16 gigabytes total. Honestly, that's more RAM than I expected to find in a machine this old. Now, what about the graphics card? No way. It's a Titan 6 gigabytes. Back when this card launched, 6 gigabytes of VRAM was absolutely absurd. Most games barely needed a fraction of that. Whoever bought this thing back then clearly wasn't messing around. The power supply is the original 875 watt unit, which is funny because this power supply alone probably weighs more than some modern office PCs. As for the CPU, we'll find out exactly what's inside once the machine boots. But while looking around, I noticed something strange. There's no hard drive, no SSD, nothing. Apparently the previous owner decided storage was optional, so I'll need to borrow a drive from another system if I want to boot it up. Let's see what happens. Oh no. CPU fan error. That's not exactly the welcome message I was hoping for. Looks like something in the cooling system isn't very happy. I couldn't even get the machine to boot into Windows. It just sat on the loading screen and sat there. I waited for almost 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. Then, out of nowhere, the system shut itself off. I turned it back on, hoping it was just a one-time glitch. Nope. Same thing. At that point, I reached over and touched the pump housing. Whoa, it was insanely hot. That was a huge red flag. I didn't really have another choice, so I decided to remove the liquid cooler and see what was going on. The radiator fan was spinning just fine, but the radiator itself didn't feel cool at all. It was almost as hot as the CPU. That made me suspect the pump had completely failed, so I cleaned off the old thermal paste and removed the pump assembly. Once I got inside, I powered the pump directly to see if it was still alive. Oh no, nothing. The impeller didn't move at all. It was completely dead. Well, mystery solved. Unfortunately, repairing AIO coolers isn't really my area of expertise. So rather than trying to fix it, I'm going to replace the entire liquid cooler with a standard air cooler instead. I decided to replace it with an air cooler, mostly because I didn't have another AIO lying around. Space inside this case is pretty tight, so I couldn't mount it exactly the way I wanted. But after a bit of trial and error, I finally got everything installed. Now for the moment of truth. Let's see if that actually fixed the problem. No way. It's alive. The system booted straight into Windows, so the faulty liquid cooler really was the culprit. With that out of the way, I installed the drivers and got everything ready for some benchmarks. First, let's take a look at the CPU. It's an Intel Core i7-3930K, a 6-core, 12-thread processor built on the LGA 2011 platform. Here's what it can do at stock settings. Now let's see how it performs in games. Let's start with something a little easier, Minecraft. I'm running at 32 chunks, the highest graphics settings, and 1080p. The frame rate hovers around 120 frames per second. It's fast but not perfectly stable. There are quite a few frame drops along the way. Then I enabled shaders and yeah, performance immediately dropped to around 30 frames per second. It's playable, but definitely not what I'd call smooth. Next up is CS2. Running on low settings, the system stays around 120 FPS. So this game is still well within the capabilities of this machine. Now it's time for something much more demanding. Cyberpunk 2077. Oh no, what's going on? The game keeps crashing before it even launches. After looking into it, I realized this graphics card only supports DirectX 11. So I tried forcing the game to run in DX11 mode and gave it another shot. Oh, come on, it still refuses to launch. Looks like this machine just isn't going to run Cyberpunk 2077. Let's move on to Black Myth Wukong instead. Oh my, this is painfully slow. The game is only running at around 20 frames per second, and it's not just the low frame rate. The stuttering is pretty severe too. Clearly, this machine needs a lot more work. Unfortunately, things got even worse. Right in the middle of a fight, the game crashed to the desktop. That's not a good sign. It looks like modern 8A games are simply too much for a 15-year-old system. If you noticed earlier, the GPU temperature had already climbed to around 80 degrees Celsius. Then I spotted something interesting. The warranty sticker was still intact, which means no one has opened this graphics card in the last 13 years. So the first thing I'm going to do is take it apart, clean it thoroughly, and replace the thermal paste. Oh my god! The thermal paste is completely dried out. It looks like the Sahara Desert in here. No wonder this card has been acting like a space heater. On top of that, the heatsink fins and cooling fan are absolutely packed with dust. So I'm going to give this thing the deepest cleaning it's probably had in over a decade. Next up is the power supply. This is probably the hardest working component in the entire system. The last thing I want is for it to catch fire halfway through a benchmark. So let's take a look inside. Oh my god, there are screws everywhere. Dell really wasn't kidding around. This power supply is held together by 12 screws. After finally getting it open, I was honestly surprised. It's incredibly clean inside. I barely have anything to clean. Then I noticed something interesting. Every single power cable is cut to almost the exact length needed for the Aurora R4. Nothing is longer than it has to be. Everything fits perfectly inside the case. If you ever try to replace this power supply with a standard ATX unit, you're probably going to run into cable length issues. And if the original PSU ever dies, finding a direct replacement won't be easy. For the CPU, I'm going to swap in a Xeon E5-1650V2. It's a slightly newer chip for this platform, and based on what I've seen, it should offer around 10 to 15% better performance. Before I start overclocking though, I want to see how the system performs at stock settings. Since the overall performance hasn't changed dramatically, I'll focus on just one game this time. Black Myth Wukong. The frame rate now sits at around 45 frames per second. More importantly, the GPU temperature has dropped to roughly 65 degrees Celsius. That's a huge improvement compared to before. The game still suffers from the occasional frame drop, but overall it's much smoother and far more stable than it was. Alright, now it's time to see what this Xeon can really do. Let's try overclocking it. Overclocking gave me roughly a 15% performance boost. Not bad, but I wanted to see how far this machine could really go. So the next upgrade is an RTX 5060 Ti. At this point, it's obvious the old graphics card is becoming the bottleneck. It's simply too outdated to fully keep up with the rest of the system. The real question is, will a modern GPU unlock a whole new level of performance? Or is this 15-year-old platform already at its limit? Let's go back to Black Myth Wukong. Now we're talking. The frame rate stays surprisingly stable at around 130 frames per second. That's roughly a 100 frames per second improvement compared to before the upgrade. Let's go back to Cyberpunk 2077. This time, the game launches without crashing, and the difference is huge. The frame rate now sits at around 150 frames per second. That pretty much confirms what I suspected. The old graphics card was the real bottleneck all along. So, after everything, here's my conclusion. Even today, this is still a surprisingly capable machine, but for the $300 I paid, I don't think it was worth it. The biggest limitation is simply its age. No matter how much I upgrade it, some modern games will always be held back by the platform. Cyberpunk 2077 is a perfect example of that. Personally, I wouldn't recommend buying one of these for gaming. For the same amount of money, you could build a much faster PC with newer hardware. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments.